Hello, this is Julie Beischel. Today I wanted to share with you an update about some of our recent research findings that were shared at the 2020 Science of Consciousness Conference. The researchers on this project were myself and Lisa Conboy. I'm currently the Director of Research at the Windbridge Research Center, and my training is in pharmacology, physiology, microbiology, and immunology. Dr. Conboy is an instructor at Harvard Medical School. Her training is in methodology, medical sociology, social epidemiology, and public health. I've been working with Dr. Conboy on various projects since about 2014. The project I'll be covering today is our SMP study, which correlated mediums' accuracy under quintuple-blind conditions with their learning styles, LSs, and sensory modality preferences, SMPs. For this study, we wanted to move forward from what we already knew from previous research. So previous phenomenological research demonstrated that mediums' experiences are multimodal and most often include seeing, hearing, and feeling. Previous accuracy testing under quintuple blind conditions during 58 readings by 20 Windbridge mediums was peer-reviewed and published and demonstrated what we call anomalous information reception, or AIR. That is, the reporting by mediums of accurate and specific information about the deceased without prior knowledge about the deceased or sitters, in the absence of any sensory feedback during or after the readings, and without using deceptive means. During those readings, the medium answered 4 questions about the deceased, who we call the discarnate. What did the discarnate look like in his or her physical life? Describe the discarnate's personality. What were the discarnate's hobbies or interests? And what was the discarnate's cause of death? We'd only ever looked at the accuracy of these responses together. We'd never looked at the accuracy of each question individually. Some LS-SMP background. A person's sensory modality preference refers to their favorite method for acquiring new information. A person's learning style involves cognitive, emotional, and psychological preferences and behaviors related to learning new information. These preferences appear to be consistent across time and task. And while the usefulness of style and preference theories in educational settings has been shown to be limited, assessment tools can be utilized to categorize and quantify inherent individual inclinations. In this study, we used 3 assessment instruments. The Index of Learning Styles, which categorized people as visual or verbal, active or reflective, sensing or intuitive, and sequential or global. We also used the Barsh Learning Style Inventory and the Learning Channel Preference, which categorized people as visual, auditory, or tactual or haptic. And these last 2 categories are related to preferences for hands-on experiences. The participants in this study were 12 Windbridge certified research mediums. These are mediums who have previously demonstrated the ability to report accurate and specific information about the deceased under various controlled laboratory conditions. They're screened and credentialed using published criteria. This study, the participants were 11 females and 1 male. Their average age was about 59 years of age. The research aims for the LS-SMP study were twofold. First, we wanted to know, are there differences in the accuracy scoring of mediums' responses to specific questions about the deceased? And then we wanted to know, do relationships exist between the accuracy scores of those questions and the medium's learning styles and/or sensory modality preferences? So the hypothesis was there will be a relationship between accuracy scores for the types of questions, physical description, personality, hobbies, or cause of death, and a medium's sensory preferences. So I wondered, will mediums with visual preferences be better at physical descriptions of people because that's a visual modality? Will mediums with auditory preferences be better at hobbies because maybe that involves words? Will mediums with tactual preferences be better at cause of death because that gets felt in the body? So what we found was that there were slight differences in the average accuracy scores the mediums received for the 4 types of questions. Personality descriptions were scored as the most accurate, and cause of death descriptions were scored as the lowest of the 4. However, No statistical differences between the four were seen. So for scientists, that means that the accuracy levels were essentially identical and that there were no differences. We also found that no significant correlations existed between the medium's accuracy percentages and any of their scores categorizing their learning styles or sensory modality preferences. That is, there were no relationships between accuracy and preferences. This may seem like a bummer, but negative results are still important results. With negative results, we have learned something new about what a phenomenon isn't. And that's the purpose of science, to acquire new knowledge. We learned that none of the four types of information that we requested is any more or less difficult to acquire or report during a mediumship reading. This finding is consistent with previous phenomenological research demonstrating that mediums experience a reading as receiving, not retrieving information. So it would make sense that the type of information would not be relevant. We also learned that learning styles and sensory modality preferences may not impact mediumistic abilities. And while I hypothesize that there might be relationships here, this also makes sense if we remember that mediumship involves aspects of all five physical senses. Mediums see, hear, feel, smell, and taste things during a mediumship reading, and they don't control which senses are activated or how and when they are. All mediums can do is have and report the experiences. There were some interesting trends in the medium scores on the LS-SMP instruments. On the ILS, the majority of these research mediums in the study were reflective versus active, intuitive versus sensory, and visual versus verbal. Equal portions were categorized as global and sequential. On the BLSI and LCP, these mediums' preferences were predominantly visual, followed by auditory, with the least preference for tactual or haptic methods. It is important to remember that these research mediums are a specific personality type who is willing to be put under a scientist's microscope, and these trends might not be representative of mediums in general. The new findings that this study contributed were, again, that no differences exist in the accuracy of question responses reported under quintuple blind conditions. And no correlation exists between accuracy scores and mediums' learning styles or sensory modality preferences. These were things no one knew before now. These findings have already been included in an academic conference, so the next step is to publish a journal article. The article Dr. Conboy and I wrote is currently being peer-reviewed. Then we'll create a free fact sheet summarizing the content of the published article. Dr. Conboy and I look forward to sharing those materials with you when possible. To learn more about the Windbridge Research Center, please visit us online at windbridge.org. While you're there, please join our email list so we can let you know when new materials like videos like this post. And to support the twofold mission of the Windbridge Research Center, performing rigorous scientific research and providing free educational materials like this video to the public, you can make a donation online at windbridge.org/donate. Thank you so much.